Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Becoming Apex podcast, episode 3, where we bring on the extraordinary to see what makes them extraordinary. So we're on episode 3, but this is our second episode of our Power Couple series. What'd you think of the last one, Edgar?
Yeah, last one was great. Bringing my wife on board and your wife, and I confirmed that my wife is the reason why I'm successful, like 100%. And I'm super excited to bring our guests today because what I see in them is what I want in my relationship, my marriage, my business. We have Jason and Jen Pritchard. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys very much for having us on. I'm excited. This is our very first podcast together. Nice. So yeah, we're excited to get this one going, dude. It's a great topic.
Yeah. How you doing today, Jen?
Good, thank you. Thank you for letting me be on as well. So he always gets a spotlight, and
that's right. I need to share some of that spotlight
today,
with you today.
I get a little bit of it.
For some people that know a little bit about you guys or don't know too much, can you kind of tell us about your backstory, where you're at now, and how, like, essentially, like, how did you go all in real estate?
Yeah. Start from when we met, and then we'll get into the real estate stuff. I know that you want to talk about.
All right, so here's the test. So how long have we been together?
We got together in November of 2006.
Actually, that was when our first date was, in November of 2006.
So I was wrong. Already we're wrong. Here we go. Sorry, guys.
That's where it all started.
Anniversary month.
We've been together about, 17 years now?
Yeah.
So we're introduced by a cousin of mine. She was dating one of his really good friends.
Yeah.
And I recently separated from my previous relationship, and, I saw her at Fresno State, and she's like, hey, there's this guy I want you to meet. And I was like, I don't want to meet anybody. And then she said, oh, he has, it's kind of goofy, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Say it, go. We're going to
go deep.
So go for it. Yeah.
She said, yeah, straight teeth, clean shoes, and a good job.
There you go.
Hey,
And
that's a good resume.
like, so then I was like, oh, okay. So I agreed to meet up with him, and then it was like magnetic from
There was a very, very strong connection from the beginning. I mean, I'm not joking. I think we met in November, and by like January we were living with each other. Dang. And so
it was wild. I do not recommend it. Don't do that ever.
Either. For us, it was we had to like learn and work through a lot of issues for those first 3 years, and while we were together, but we made it through, and I couldn't be happier than I am right now to have Jennifer as my partner.
So how old were you guys when you met?
26.
Yeah, 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang, it just doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yep.
I still look 26.
Yeah, you guys actually look
reverse aging. So I mean, during that time we were just both working regular jobs. So I was knee deep in my corporate life back then. She was working at Fresno State in the admissions department, getting her master's. She eventually got her counseling degree and became a high school counselor. And it was at that time where I had just reached this transitionary point in my life where I had been in corporate America for 15 or 16 years and was just really, really burnt out with, my career trajectory. And I thought when I had got in that, I was going to climb the corporate ladder and become some mid-level executive and make $200,000 or $300,000 a year and just, retire when I was in my 60s or 70s and just have just like a life like that. And I found myself in a space in my early 30s where I was just very, very unhappy, and I was projecting a lot of that unhappiness into our marriage, into my relationship with my kids. And I realized that it had to do with the fact that I was not living to my full potential, and I just knew that I was put on this earth to do more than what I was doing. And for whatever reason, I was really, really intrigued by the idea of investing in real estate, even from a young age. And there was no outlets like there are now. There wasn't social media or YouTube or these different things where the information was accessible as it is right now. And so I just convinced myself that, now's not the right time. Maybe later. I kept telling myself that story. And eventually at, 33, I came to Jen and I was like, hey, if I don't do something right now, this is probably never going to happen. And, we came up with a plan that allowed me to go all in on real estate for a year. And I figured worst case scenario, I could always go back and get a job. I didn't burn any bridges or anything like that.
Yeah. So you pretty much just left your job and said, hey, burn the bridges. I'm going to go real estate.
That was 100%. It. I think for me, I am the kind of person where if I have a plan B, it's very easy for me to revert back to that. And it's so difficult at the beginning. There's so much struggle. There's so much work that you have to put in, and the result is very delayed. The work that you do now, typically in our business, doesn't pay off for months down the road, right? And I don't think you're conditioned to that in corporate America. Corporate America, you're conditioned to working, and every 2 weeks or every 30 days you get a check. And so we're used to trading our time for money. And this business is not that. This business is, you have to learn how to produce a result before you get paid. And learning that process took me some time. It took me almost a year.
So you got a year to do. And what did that year look like?
Yeah, it was a lot of ups and downs, and you know, it was a lot of stress and a lot of, just kind of.
I mean, but we
figuring
put
out as I
ourselves in
went.
a position where we paid off bills. Right?
Yeah. So let's talk through the plan, because I think that part is important.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Like, what were your thoughts when he kind of presented you with this idea, right? Because I know that, like, I've heard, different people that I know that are in the real estate industry, where they have like a regular job and they're in real estate, and they're just kind of like, it's really hard for me to leave this. I got to, and then my wife won't. It's kind of like that, because it is scary, right? To just kind of go, like that. So what did that look like? That conversation? How did you feel?
I would say generally I'm pretty easygoing. So for
are.
me, it was like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, we're back to where we are now. So just go for it. And I let him go all in. And I mean, the year looked like you not working, me working full time. Right, we even Airbnb'd our room.
I mean, I was working, but it wasn't like I wasn't working. It was
no,
just
he was
learning
working
the
and
business.
learning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you're right.
So did you? And I'm so sorry.
I was gonna say, I do want to hear back a little bit more as far as like when you were feeling unhappy with yourself, not tapping into your full potential.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you, being his wife?
I would say we pretty much were on different paths, because I knew I wanted to be a high school counselor from the age of like 15, 16 years old, and I was there already.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I was very fulfilled, very happy in my career. So I guess it was hard to see him not happy, but on the other hand, like,
You had found your vehicle. I think like Jennifer's counselor had been such a huge impact, and you can tell that story, I guess. But I've always admired her, because from when we met, she knew exactly what she wanted to do.
yeah.
And
When I was 15 years old, my high school counselor took me back east for like 10 days, and we toured Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all Ivy League schools. And she just created this vision for me that like you could do anything. I didn't go to any of those schools. I ended up going to UC Santa Barbara, but I mean, just going out and getting on a plane and going to New York and going to DC. And I think she kind of sparked that like love for travel, like within me.
Yeah.
But she was great. She was a phenomenal mentor of mine. And I knew I wanted to be just like her.
Right.
Yeah.
So seeing Jason kind of not fulfilling his own like
He had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So
that's
were you telling him things like, "Hey, dude, you got to step it up," or was he just kind of letting him figure it out?
No, she didn't tell me like that. And there's times later on in that year where we had conversations like that. And I'll tell you a funny story that still to this day sticks out in my head. But at the beginning, and one of the things that I'll always give Jennifer credit for is that I really feel like this. She believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And I think that's such a huge piece for somebody that is transitioning. All my identity was a corporate sales job. I was a manager. My professional identity was so ingrained in that. I think so many people have a hard time evolving and changing into something else because they're so used to doing one thing, right? And so for me, I needed her support to give me the confidence that I needed to feel like, hey, I can make this leap, right?
And I saw that confidence when we first met.
Straight
You know?
teeth, clean
Yeah.
shoes.
He had this really nice jawline too. I knew that was going to take him far.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that was it. And I think we didn't have like this crazy plan. I think what we got serious about was making sure that financially we can handle it. And I think that's a big thing, that if you're going to make a leap like this, as a couple, you need to take a good hard look at your financial habits and understand how much money you have coming in, how much money that's coming out. And I was the main breadwinner at that time. I mean, Jen was working, but I was making more income. And so for me to walk away from that income at that point was not an insignificant thing. And we had all of the responsibilities that come along with
The cars,
we had
student
car
loans,
payments, mortgage payments. We had 2 kids that were in, elementary and middle school. We had credit card debt, all of those things, right? And so for me to walk away from a 6-figure income was not, not an easy decision. And so that was the big thing for us too. We got really serious about our budget.
But I never felt like we were poor. Like when.
And that was the crazy thing. Like we were so like we had such bad personal financial habits before that. Like money was coming in and we're spending it as fast as it was coming in, and we're accumulating all this debt, and it just didn't really make sense. And a lot of people knock Dave Ramsey, and I don't agree with everything that Dave Ramsey says, but like for us at that time, his model, I think, worked very well. We just needed to get our finances under control. And once we did that,
You're making it sound like it was worse than it was. I don't think I had really bad spending habits at all.
We both did. I mean, it wasn't like we were crazy, but we had no money in our savings account.
That is very true.
We weren't investing in anything. And I think to me, that's really bad. You know what I'm saying? Looking back at it now and looking at where we're at now.
But it was normal. It was normal.
It was
normal, yes.
Whatever we want to call quote unquote normal. But I think it was.
We would load up our savings account when like we'd get our tax refund and it would have like $5,000.
We're like, how long? And it was just this cycle that we would go through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big thing. If you guys are if the couples out there are listening, they want to make a move like this, you need to be on the same page. And I think you need to have your personal financial house in order, because if you're constantly worrying about paying your mortgage or how are we going to put food on the table or we need to pay for the kids for this, it puts all this pressure on you to perform when you don't have the actual skills to perform yet, right? Then you start making desperate and reckless decisions and you force deals that should not be deals. And you start doing things that can sabotage you before you even get your business off the ground. And so that was for us.
So we paid off our bills, right? And I was working. My role was to have that W-2 income, maintain my credit. And Jason really took on a lot of the roles with the kids. I mean, he's the one that took the kids to school every day.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I did. Cool. Yeah. I was there. I took them to school in the morning. I'd work for like 5 or 6 hours. I'd pick them up and then I'd take them back and forth to their thing. So I had a window of time during the day and then time on the evenings and weekends.
And working involved.
Yeah.
Like Bigger Pockets. I mean, you were on Bigger Pockets all the time, like just learning.
A lot of learning at the beginning. Yeah.
And I'm sure you wanted to like shove all that learning in. Was there like a pressure to a certain degree to like make it work?
Oh, obviously
the year.
I had a ton of pressure. And it was pressure that I put on myself because as a man, I associate very strongly with being a provider for my family. That's something that for me makes me feel really good, providing a good life for my family. So I joke with Jen and I tell her, hey, my love language is providing. So for me doing that stuff
it's not a joke.
And being in a position back then where I wasn't able to really provide financially because I needed to take some time just to learn and understand the business, that was hard for me. So that's where that pressure came from.
And what was that metric like that 1 year anniversary? Was it like hey, by this time you need to have generated this much?
Yeah, we didn't like for us. We didn't have it like, hey, if we have this much money saved. Thinking back, we probably should have had a more detailed plan. When I say plan, it was just, do we have enough money coming in to last for a year, right? And can we do this for a year? And then let's just commit to doing this, and then we'll see where we're at in 12 months. And then if it's not working, then I will go back and get a job. You know what I mean? And we didn't define what working was. I think we just had each other's backs, and that was it. And it was like, let's just figure this out, and then we'll go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of where with your first deal, was that like confirmation for yourself, like I can do this?
Yeah. And I mean, there was a lot of
roller coaster.
It was a big roller coaster at the beginning, dude, because like we were talking about earlier, you put in a lot of work and you plant seeds now that don't bear any fruit for months down the road, and it's hard to have the patience to wait to see your work actually manifest itself, right? And so, you know, there was a time, I think like 9 or 10 months into our journey, this is the conversation that I was talking about earlier, where, you know, I just wasn't getting the traction that I thought I wanted to see. And I remember very distinctly, we had a conversation in our bedroom and she sat me down and Jen said, I don't give a fuck if you have to go get a job at Walmart or Starbucks
or Target,
or you don't start making some money. We're going to have to find something else to do. And so like for me, after that, no joke, in like 45 days, I had 3 deals in contract. And so I needed that kick in the butt in order to get there, but it was all the work that I was doing that like I needed that last little push from her to just do, like, it's like, all right, whatever needs to happen, let's just make it happen. And it was that, like, I think the tipping point for me were those 3 deals, because it was like bang, bang, bang. These 3 deals happened all within a 45-day time span. And we were off and running, dude. And it wasn't monetized deals. It was deals in contract that we were flipping. And you and I know, like, I mean, when you buy a house and you flip it, you're not seeing any money coming in from that for 5 or 6 months down the road. And so there was a lot of faith that happened after that, because we cashed in.
And then you had to learn how to flip a house.
I mean, we cashed in our life savings. This is how supportive Jennifer was of me. It was like, we took a second mortgage out on our house. We maxed out every credit card that we had. I cashed in my life savings. I borrowed against my 401k. Like, literally, I don't recommend that anybody do this, but this is what we did. And we had to do that to be able to buy all 3 of those properties. And then it was like, all right, what do we do now? You know, because I didn't have a construction background. I didn't do this. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was really pushing all of our chips in the middle. And going back to what I was saying at the beginning, I'm the type of person that performs very well under those situations. And so for me, when pressure's on, I'm usually operating at my best. And I needed to put myself in that type of situation in order to perform.
So would you say that conversation in the bedroom was like the absolute turning point from, it was that little push, but would you say that was when you were 100% convinced on what you guys were doing for each other?
I tell that story a lot, and I'm curious to hear your take on like how you feel and what you remember from that, and just kind of what your headspace was back then.
I don't remember that conversation as clearly as you do. I will say that's generally how and we're kind of playful with each other. We cuss a lot in our house.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual. I was just frustrated. This is the first time we've ever really talked about this. I would say that, like, as a woman, I want my husband to also be a provider. I'm pretty fiercely independent.
Yep.
But there's a part of me that, like, I didn't really love that he was, like, staying home and I was going to work. At the end of that year, at the beginning, it was easier to just kind of deal with him home, because he's very, very helpful. Jason is, like, so incredibly helpful at the house. But yeah, I wanted him to be a man, and I wanted him to provide, and I wanted him to go to work, and I that's something that's very attractive to
And
me.
it's hard going back, like, people want to see the result. So it's like you want to see the house that you're flipping, right? And even for her, you saying that is interesting to me. Like, it wasn't like I wasn't working. It just wasn't the result wasn't there.
But I was leaving and I was going to work.
Yeah, of course. It's understandable. Yeah. So it's like, I'm leaving the house every day. You're at home. You said you're a real estate investor, but where's the real estate at? You know what I mean? Like, I don't see anything. So it's totally understandable. And I can get why, if you don't have really a good connection and good communication with your spouse, how you could end up like having 2 different types of outlooks and perspectives on these type of situations. And so you have to communicate. If you're the one like me in that situation, I think you need to do a very good job of communicating exactly what it is that you're doing. Here's what I did today.
I don't think you did that.
I did not. I did a terrible job now thinking about it. I internalize everything.
I just knew that he was on the computer for like 8 hours a day.
Yeah, that's it. And I internalize everything. And so for me, I'm just like, I don't like to talk about it. Let me just go do it. You know what I mean? And I think if you're in that space where Jen and I were at, 10 or 11 years ago, I think having really good, clear communication about, here's exactly what I did today or this week. Here's the outcome of those things. I'm meeting these sellers. I'm going on these appointments, right? That type of thing. Yeah. And so then that way the spouse and the partner feels like we're making progress.
Like some good accountability, some good feedback.
Right. Yep.
Even though I didn't have that, like, Jason's not one that's going to let me down. He's never going to let me down. He's not going to let our family down.
Yeah. Yep.
See, and the fact that you have that much faith in him, I'm sure that played a lot in how you felt.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, at what point would you say, okay, this is working? Like, what, as far as from like your perspective, you say, okay, like, he is staying home. I'm going, and I know that there was those 3 deals. You say, okay, this is working. Like, at what point did you see that and like just say, okay, let's go? Like,
I would say we flipped the house on Hughes, right? And then I feel like Princeton came. That was the second one.
Yeah.
I don't remember the other 2, but it was like, okay, we could do this.
Yeah.
Like, and if other people could do it, why not us?
Yeah.
Right.
I dealt with imposter syndrome for a very long time. I had probably flipped 50 houses, and then I was still questioning my ability to. I was telling myself, I had this narrative in my head that I was just getting lucky, and this is going to be the last deal that you're going to do. And then finally, I was like, did you just get lucky 50 times in a row? Like, let's be serious about what's going on, right? And I think I had to become self-aware and insert a different thought pattern and a belief system every time my head would go to that space where I was like, no, this isn't you. You're just, whatever. And I started inserting this belief system that, no, this is what you're going to do. You didn't get lucky 50 times. You really know how to do this business. The business is going to continue to grow and progress and improve. And it was like in between year 2 and 3 where I really shifted gears. And I felt like up until that point, I felt like the wheels could have just come off at any moment. You know what I mean? And I worried about so many different things. And I was such a worrier back then. And I've learned that emotions like fear and self-doubt and worry, they don't serve us at all. Like I would literally keep myself up at night worrying that the houses that we had remodeled and put on the market weren't going to sell. And I would tell myself this story that it's like, this is it. You're going to bankrupt your whole family. Like everything's gone. You're going to have to go back to work. I would literally have this conversation in my head. And then after selling all of those houses, you finally tell yourself like, why does it even make sense to tell yourself this story, right? Like, I think most of these emotions, we literally manufacture these negative scenarios out of thin air. They're not rooted in reality. None of it is rooted in reality because I have flipped like a lot of houses and I've never not sold one of them. You know what I mean? Like, and I've never bankrupted my family and I've never done all of these things. So it's like, if that's the reality, why would we choose to live in these low-level emotions, right? And I as soon as I got past that fear and I learned how to handle that and quiet that voice and insert a voice that was empowering and insert a voice that was propelling me closer to where I wanted to go, things started happening much faster, dude. Because for the first 2 years, it was like I was not in a flow state where I was like just kind of going with everything that was coming. I was like fighting the whole way, dude. It was like me swimming upstream trying to make it happen. And once I was able to reconcile some of those things, then I got into a space where things really started moving. So I shifted gears really in like year 3.
So you're in like a flow state right now.
I know. I want to know what did that look like from your perspective? Seeing him kind of go through that, like seeing him kind of like.
I didn't think he was getting lucky. I thought he was learning the business.
Yeah.
So again, like you had to do it. You had this one's done. Let's move on to the next one.
And did you ever voice
Never
that, like feeling?
It's so crazy. Even talking about this out loud right now, I was thinking that right now. I had never went to her one time and was like, I don't know if I'm just getting lucky. I feel like I'm an imposter. I feel like a phony and a fraud. Like I was then getting around other investors that were like doing what I thought were much higher level things than me. And then we always play this comparison game in this business where you look at them and you're like, dude, I'm never going to be like this guy. And so,
but had you told me that, I would have been like, what are you thinking? Like, you're great. You can do this and just keep going.
I agree. If you're listening to this, yes, please talk about these types of things. Cause I would have been able to reconcile that faster by having an open line of communication.
Cause I like personally, like with my wife, like whenever I've had those moments, even like getting on the podcast at the very beginning, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And she's like, quit being a little bitch.
Yeah.
You know, that once it's all said and done, you're going to be happy that you did it and go do it. And you need that push. That's why having a strong partner is very, very important.
I would have really told him, like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, that's
exactly.
what I would have said.
Yeah.
So that's why I think like you guys have that dynamic with each other. But there's some things you said, like self-awareness and then manufacturing, right? You said those 2 words that stuck out to me because you have manufactured the lifestyle that you have today.
Yep.
And I am one of your students in the coaching program, and I will say I've yet to get a deal, but it's so close. I feel it right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I learned as being your student is like we can manufacture the life we want.
Yep.
And you gifted us students some books, and I've been applying everything that I've been learning. And I wanted you to dive in a little bit more in that, like how you continue to manufacture your day every day with your manifestation law of attraction.
And to add to that, just because that was going to be my question as well, because a little while ago you were mentioning, and I find this fascinating just as the thought, because we all go through this. I go through this imposter syndrome thinking like, how can I grow? Like, is this really me? You're kind of going almost like at a defense instead of an offense.
Yep.
And it seems to me like you kind of switched, side and said, hey, instead of going at this from defense to offense, like you said, implanting those positive things, like what does that look like? I mean, adding on to Edgar's question, like, where did that happen, and what's like not the science, but like the formula? I guess you could say that switched it.
for me, I was very, very skeptical of this type of stuff before I really started embracing it. I was the most skeptical person. I didn't believe any of this was true. And I was like, nope, that's not it. You just work and, you know, you get the result and it doesn't matter. Or like all the whatever. I would
say 2017. I looked back at your journal.
I am like living proof of that law of attraction works. I don't need any more proof in my life because I'm living it, right? And so for me, the thing that really shifted it was I met a guy who was a friend and mentor. His name was Alan Folio. Mm-hmm. And Alan was a couple years ahead of me in the business, and he had achieved a lot of success. He was the same age as me. Jennifer had actually went to high school with him, and so, you know, they all knew each other. Yeah. And so it's like, Alan was the one, because Alan was driving a tractor and he was making like 30 or 40 grand a year working on a farm in Kerman. And he went from that to, when I met him, he had 30 plus rentals. And that leap happened over a 3-year period. And so I was like, if this guy who's my age, who didn't even graduate high school, okay, went from being on a tractor making 30 grand a year to 3 years later making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and owning 30 rental properties in Fresno, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm just going to listen to exactly what he says, because my old thought patterns and belief systems weren't giving me the things that I wanted in my life. So what was it going to hurt to try something new?
He would come home and he'd be like, hey, Jen, he's like, I met this guy. Can you believe he has like 30 rentals?
Yeah. I told her, I remember. And I was like, if we ever get 30 rentals, you're quitting from your job. I'm retiring. I thought like that was it, dude. And so what Alan really told me was going back to understanding our thoughts and our feelings, and our thoughts, our feelings, and our action leads to the outcomes that manifest in our lives, right? And I learned that from him, and he put me on to guys like Bob Proctor and Napoleon Hill and like other people that I had been exposed to before, but I had never really like dove into like their trainings and what they taught, and then started applying them in my life. So for me, the actions, this is how it started for me. It was getting in an alignment with the way that I thought, the way that I felt, and then what I was actually doing. And that's how law of attraction has worked for me. I don't believe that you can just sit there and then not do anything and then manifest $1 million. That's not how it's worked for me. Yeah. But I feel like if I think that I can do something, I feel it in my heart, those two things are in alignment, and then I work every day towards those goals. If all three of those things are in alignment, that's how I've been able to manifest basically everything that I wanted. And so I like to have my goals top of mind. So my first exercise that I did was just writing my goals out. And Alan was very big on that. He used to carry a little like card, like a 3x5 card, and he kept it in his wallet, and it was just his goals there. And every time he took his wallet out, he would look at it and he would show it to me, and he would put it on his nightstand, and he'd put it on his mirror when he was like shaving and stuff like that. And that's a thing that I think most people don't realize, that they're just floating through their life on autopilot. Most people they just float through their whole day. They're not intentional at all about what they're thinking, and they're just kind of like meandering through their life, right? And for me, I learned that if I start my day by reviewing my goals, making those the things that are top of mind, and making that the focus of what I'm thinking about all day, and if I feel like I can actually achieve it, and then all the work that I do is also in alignment with that, then that's how it starts. And so I went from that, and then I started applying things like the Miracle Morning just to create some structure around it, right, and build a system. And then it's evolved into kind of like my own routine that I do, to get the results and the outcomes that I want. But Jennifer, like, this is actually interesting.
What are you going to talk?
Jen doesn't.
You're not talk shit right now.
No, I'm not going to talk shit. I think she doesn't subscribe to this the same way that I do as far as doing it, but we have lots of discussions about this, right?
So I would say, as you were saying that in my head, I was thinking like, for me, watching this happen, I could have been like, what are you doing? Like, and I could have been very critical of him and kind of judgmental, but I wasn't at all. I just let him do it, right?
Yeah.
And I am not as routine as him.
Yep.
Not at all.
So, but like seeing that, right? Because like when we were on the podcast with our wives, I remember mentioning, because I try to do this type of stuff too, and I'll talk to my wife about it, and she'll see me doing it. And not to say that she's going to get up and journal and do all those things and meditate and do all that, but she sees me doing it. It's almost like you rub off on each other.
Yeah.
And then like I started seeing her hustle, and then it made me hustle, and then we were just kind of bouncing this idea of greatness off of each other and helped us grow.
Yeah.
So would you say that played kind of a part somewhat to a certain degree? Or?
I would say throughout our entire relationship, we've kind of bounce off each other. And,
Yep.
you know, early on, I was kind of, I would say, well, I don't know, you describe it really well. Like, say it.
I don't know what you're saying. Yeah.
When, like, I was outgrowing him in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I kind of, then he was in real estate, and then he was outgrowing me, and then we're kind of going on these separate paths, and I had to decide, like, am I going to step up or am I not?
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah. There's been these seasons in our lives where the other person has kind of outpaced the other. And we've never let that gap grow so far that it causes like serious issues. And to both of our credits, in the times where I saw Jennifer early on kind of like outpacing me, I was like, all right, I have to do something to keep up with this girl, right? And then I found my groove in real estate, and I just went off like a rocket. And so she did a very good job of saying like, nope, I'm not just going to be the same old Jen, right? Like, you know, I want to keep up with Jason. And so she did a good job of evolving and growing. And the way that I look at the manifestation and that internal work and law of attraction, I'm the leader in that. And then I just let me take care of that, and I'll get us to where we want to go. Right. And it's, she's always been a great job of supporting. I don't need her to journal with me. I don't need her to meditate with me. I don't need her to do all of that stuff. I believe wholeheartedly that works. So just let me run with that ball, and I'll carry us.
But I need to create an environment where you can be
support.
successful. Yeah.
Cause it's weird. Like if you see your spouse saying affirmations to themselves in the mirror, you know what I mean? And talking to themselves, you like,
what did you say, babe?
Yeah. You're like, what are you doing over there? Right. And like, even simple things like that can be enough for you to question whether or not, like, maybe, is this stupid? Like my wife just thinks I'm dumb here talking in the mirror, like doing that stuff. And she's all like, again, just being supportive is enough. I think being supportive of that for me was enough. And so that's all that I needed from her. And now the outcome is there. Right? Like,
not just supported, but I'm super just impressed with you that you've done that for years.
Yeah.
And that's something that you do every single day. Like
I mean, I don't want to say 100% of the days, but I'll say 90%. Yeah, 90% of the days I do it, dude.
So can you just give us like a brief overview of what that looks like?
So for me,
what is your first
I just want to know. I want to do it.
So for me, this is how this is what it's evolved in for me. Yes, yeah. I wake up in the morning, just get up, shave, get some coffee. I like to find a space either in my desk or in my house where it's just quiet and I can have some time for me. I have a journal. It's called the Project 369 journal that I use as kind of what I do my gratitude and my goal setting and all that stuff. And there's, an exercise in there daily where you can write that down. So I start with that. I feel like the exercise of writing things down is very, very powerful. And I like that more so than typing things digitally. And so I like handwriting. I've always liked to handwrite my goals.
And that gives it a little bit more structure, right? Because I think at one point I was trying to journal and I literally just got blank piece of paper.
And then it's like you don't know what to do. And so for me, why I like that tool is because it's very easy to follow. It's just do this every day and that's it. And so for me, I'm the type of person that can follow instruction very well. So if you give me a plan, I can execute on the plan. So I start with that. And I'm a very big believer in visualization. Visualization is a very big component of my thing. So I have kind of this mental movie that I play, and this movie has evolved over time. And it's basically the life that I want to live like 10 years from now, right? So 10 years from now, it's like, me pulling up in the car that I want, into the house that I want with my wife and my family there, right? Like I have this sequence where I can pull my phone up and I open up my bank app and I see how much money's in there. I visualize my mom living with us in our house, and we have a separate house on our property. So I walk in and I see her and my family and my mom and all of these things. And it's this feeling of having, like, the trick with this is coming from a place that it's already done. So you're not wanting it. It's like, how would you feel if all this stuff was done already, right? If all that money was in the bank and the house that I wanted and my mom was there and my kids were there, I wouldn't be in a feeling of like, oh, I need these things. It's like, what would you feel if that was what your life was like? And that, to me, I think is where you need to get with that, especially with the visualization exercise. If you can operate from a place where it's already done, that's when the manifestation process works really well. And then I have verbal affirmations that I have typed out that I like to say out loud in front of a mirror. My first one is of Jennifer. And my first affirmation is that I'm so grateful and fortunate to have Jennifer as my wife. And she's been so supportive of me through all of my journey, and I wouldn't be here without her. That's literally the very first line that I have in my affirmation, and I have like 10 affirmations that I'll read out loud. And then
those have changed over time though too.
Yeah, everything evolves. So this is because I've told you this, everything that I've written down, and I'm not even exaggerating, dude, like every single thing that I have written down as far as a goal, I've achieved it.
Yeah.
And so I can show you, I have stacks of like legal pads, dude, because I just used to write on yellow legal pads at first of like, this is my goal. And I just write them down 10 times a day. And all that stuff's done. All the money that I wanted to make, all the properties that I wanted to, all of that stuff is done. So it's again, like people want to see proof. How much more proof can I give you? Like I can give you a legal pad from 2018 that literally shows it's every day, it's dated with all of my stuff signed at the bottom, right? And I can show that to you now and I have all that stuff.
Yeah.
So how much, I don't know how much more, like for me, I was the kind of person that was like, I need to see the result. Like there's the result already. I'm living the result right now.
Yeah.
And so that is what I like to do every single day. And this is the thing that people need to understand. This is the analogy I like to use with this type of internal work that you're doing. It's not like you walk into a room and you flip a switch and then all of a sudden like your life is just different and the lights come on, right? Yeah. For me, it's like a dimmer switch and every day it like ticks up 1%. So every day you do something like this, it just ticks up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And in 6 months, all of a sudden, like the lights are on and you're like, wow, I feel different now. And like my thought patterns and my belief systems, some of the outcomes that I wanted are starting to happen and it's different. And then you open the door into a new room and you have to do the new thing. And that's that process of like leveling up. So you achieve those goals, then you go back and say, what are the new goals that I want to hit, right? I did all of this now, let's do the new ones, right? And then you just keep kind of progressing and leveling up that way.
And I think one thing that, because I did sit on a podcast with you before, and I like that you made an emphasis that, because I feel like in this business, we think about business, right? We think about numbers and growth and just business and money and stuff like that. But we don't take into consideration our family, our relationships. And I remember specifically that you mentioned that. I went home that night and I spoke with my wife about it.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I was on this podcast today with a guy named Jason, huge flipper here in our area. And, you know, he did mention that like we fill these buckets, but like it's just as important to fill that bucket like that has to do with your family and to become a better father and it's like one of those things because we can get entwined with where we're just working all the time and it's like where are our kids at, where's our spouse at? And so talk a little bit more about like that, I guess you could say.
I think you do an incredible job. Like family is first. I would say family is before business.
I have always made a point of making a priority of our marriage, our family. I think it's everything. If you want to be, to me, the ideal life encompasses like operating at a high level in all of these areas, right? So if you think of it as spokes on a wheel, right? Your money is just one of the spokes. Your marriage is one. Your relationship with your kids and your parents is another spoke, right? Your health is one, right? So you have all of these spokes. And if the spoke for money is all the way up, but everything else is not there, then the wheel's not going to like roll the way it should. You know what I mean? And so I have always made that a priority. And I feel like for us, it's travel, you know? And so we made a decision you can go and look at my Instagram, honestly. There's like a post I made in like 2017, I think, where we had sat down and I just said, listen, we're at our best when we travel. Like work-life balance is a thing that gets tossed around a lot in our industry. And like sometimes I have like seasons in my business where I'm working like a madman, you know, and it's just all it is that, right? And for us, I realized that we're at our best when we're traveling together. Like for whatever reason, I give myself permission to just unplug. I don't have to be focused on business. I can be 100% in tune with her and us. And I'm not like, what's going on with everything? You know what I mean? And so we made a decision that we're going to travel once a quarter in 2017 or even 2016. And we have not deviated from that, right? And we go every 3 or 4 months, we go somewhere cool. You know what I mean? And we make that a priority, dude. And so it's like, that's an example of something of like prioritizing things outside of the business and creating a business that allows you to live the life that you want.
That's always been a priority for us. I would say travel has always been important to us. The business has just allowed us to have these cooler experiences and get to see cooler places. But that's very much who we are.
The business should support the life that you want to live. So get very good, get clarity on what kind of life you want to live. What do you want your marriage to look like? What do you want your relationships with all the people that are important to look like? What do you want your health to look like? what do you want your finances to look like? And then the business should feed into all of that. And I think to the point that you're saying, Ernesto, I think everybody just does the business and then they try to fit everything else around that. And to me, that's always been backwards. I feel like the business should support the lifestyle.
It has to.
Yep.
Yeah, and that just burns people out, creates resentment in your household. Your marriage starts to fall apart.
Resentment's a good one. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
That was me before
Yeah.
I really started to realize that. My wife brought it to my attention. She's like, dude, I don't even like you right now. You're just a roommate. All you do is work. I'm like, okay, what do I got to do to change? And she kind of helped me direct myself to that type of like man that I need to become.
You said the word resentment right now. It's funny. It brings up a hot button for us. Why don't you tell them the story about that?
Well, you're very resentful of me.
Not right now.
now.
But yeah. Go ahead.
So, I mean, Jason built the business that we have, right? I give him full credit for all of that. Yes, it was very supportive, but I was just like, just go. You can do it. There became a point where, I was working and this is my life. And, I didn't realize how much he had on his plate. I had no idea how many private money loans we had out. I didn't know how many rentals we had under our belt and what that involved day to day. I had no idea, honestly. I just thought he was doing a great job.
Yeah.
But he very much started to resent me because he saw that like I just got to go to work every day and then I got to go on these fancy trips and I had no idea really truly how much he had on his plate. And I would say he had been encouraging me to leave my job for a few years. And I mean, I absolutely had to leave my job 2 years ago because that resentment was so intense. I had to help out.
Yeah.
I'll even go before that because for me, it was less about her leaving her job and more about she needed to have at least a baseline understanding of what was going on in our lives. Because I told her, I said, if
something happens to me, you would not know what to do.
It's irresponsible for you to not have any idea what's going on. God forbid I get struck by lightning tomorrow, right? You literally have no idea who owes us money, who we owe money to, who do you collect rent from, like all of these things, how we pay our mortgages. You don't have access to our business bank account. Like you have access to it, but you don't go in there. You know what I mean? And it was just the very first thing that we did that started kind of this snowball going down was we formed a trust. We formed a trust for our family because I was like, if something happens to us,
Jason formed the trust, and then I went to the attorney's office and signed the documents for the trust.
She did, yeah. Even then, she was like, you just deal with it, right, and do it. But I was worried because I have worked with so many sellers going through probate, and I've seen so many messy situations, and I didn't realize that if our assets were not in a trust, even if we had a will, the everything had to go in front of a probate judge, and then they would kind of determine like, which kid gets what or who can sell, and I didn't want that to happen. And so I think the very first thing for me was like, let's invest, let's get a trust, let's get our entities and everything set up. I mean, at that point, we had almost 30 rental properties and I was flipping 30 or 40 houses a year. So we had a lot of things going on. And so that was step one for me. And then it was a transition from that to like, we had an employee that I had to let go at that time, and she was helping me with all the rentals. And at that point, I was like, I cannot manage all of these rentals on my own. Like, you're going to need to step in and help me like oversee that. And she did an incredible job of that. And that was like her first foray into our business.
I had no option.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not hiring anybody right now. And so it's like, you're going to have to step in and do this. And she did an incredible job. And that was where she started contributing to the business first, was with the rentals. And that's been something that she's oversees to this day. And I don't really have to really worry about that.
So getting back to the word resentment,
Yeah.
like what was that really about?
I was bitter about that at first. And
What's that?
I was bitter that I was doing all of this work, right? And there was now no involvement from her, right? And so I think I projected that initially. It's like about the irresponsibility, but I do think deep down, I was just bitter about that. I was
But I thought I was fulfilling my role because my role was to go to work, have that W-2 income, and have that good credit. So I didn't really understand that resentment.
Yep. And I should, again, going back, this is weird. This is like a therapy session. So like going back, like now I realize like, again, I'm just put your head down and let's just go to work. I can do that all day long. And so for me, that's easy. But if we're not talking about these things, that stuff really does start to like, it starts to become a poison in you and you just let it go. And then it starts growing into something bigger and worse. Yeah. And so fortunately for us, we got into a space where it didn't create like some huge problem, but it did get to a place where it's like, I need your help. Like, you know what I mean? I need help right now.
I thought it created a problem.
And then from the trust and the rental management, that stuff coming over, then there was like another 2-year period where we experienced even more growth. And we went from 30 or 40 properties to 100 properties. And we're flipping 60, 70 houses a year. And then it was me and 2 people, one virtual assistant and one other in person. And that, like, 3 people cannot handle all of that on their own in an effective way. And so that was when I really started pushing her to say, like, we don't need the money from your job. You know what I mean? And so like, it doesn't, like, she would always bring up,
but we need
healthcare.
insurance.
She was like, well, it's insurance and we need the insurance. And I was like, well, can't people buy insurance? Like, I was like, lots of people that own businesses just go pay for their own insurance. And so it was like, that was like a
part of it was,
back and forth.
Okay, yes, we didn't need my income, but like me leaving my job was more than just letting go of my income.
Yeah.
That was just who I was.
Yeah.
Like, I had been in education for 20 years and I knew that was my goal, again, since I was very young. So I had achieved that, and now I'm going to leave that.
Yeah.
And then to go do, like,
basically be Jason's wife in the real estate business. Yeah. And I understood that early on, but I think.
And to totally rely on him.
Yeah.
Like, that was hard for me even.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been together for so long, so you think, like, why is that a problem?
Yeah.
But again, I was so independent, I didn't want to rely on anybody, and that's another kind of issue in our relationship.
Yeah. I think it's just figuring out how the roles evolve. And my thing with Jenna was like, you're my partner in this. You own half of everything that we own. So it's not like, this is not my thing. I think that there was this time where it took Jennifer to start saying, oh, this is my business too. You know what I mean? And I wasn't building this so Jason could be the owner. I was building it for us and our kids. You know, and so.
And I knew that.
Yeah, but I think that identity, like the identity for her being in education and being an educator and being a counselor.
You know what it was? Is like, I was going to go into real estate. I don't know real estate. Like, I don't know those terms. I don't know.
And what did I always say?
I didn't fucking know it either.
I didn't know either. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so it was like, so when she quit her job and then we were working together like side by side every day, I was like, oh God, this is what I asked for here. And so she was like, well, what do I do? And I said, well, call these people. And she's all, what do I say? And I said, just pick up the phone and call them. And you're a very smart woman. And like, you'll be able to navigate this conversation. And Jennifer.
He wanted me to struggle through it, which was not nice. There was a part of me that.
There was never a part of me, not even 1%, that wanted her to struggle through anything. What I wanted her to do was be resourceful and help, because I have a full plate every single day. So if I've got to stop what I'm doing to walk you through how to do this one thing that I know is a very simple task for you to be able to do, you're very smart, very capable. Just trust me. I'm not going to just push you in the deep end and let you fail. Just trust me, do it, and I guarantee you'll be able to get it done. Yeah. And I think that
I would be like, Jason, can you send me this? Where can I find this?
Yeah. And I was like, Jen, you know where to find this thing, right? It's like, you know how to do all of that stuff.
But you can get in faster.
Yeah. So I think we had that kind of going on at the beginning, but
now
we've hit a groove, man. Like, I mean, we're in such an amazing place right now. It's just, it feels so good, dude. Like, it feels like I'm living the dream life that I always wanted to live. You know what I mean? And that's
and it didn't take long for me to catch on. It literally took me a year to know who I needed to call to ask the questions that I needed answers
to. Going to court too. I seen that on your.
Yeah. And now, I mean, she goes to eviction court, handles all of that stuff on her own. Like, she really does. Like, she does all of these things where I'm like, wow, you did all that. And it's like, without any, not without any support or help, but
the attorney's there, so I feel completely confident.
So now she knows, like, how to do all. It's pretty amazing. And so we're just in this great space, man. It's just an awesome place to be in.
Well, I definitely felt it at your guys' house, and that's why, like, my wife and I were just like, you can just feel the energy within you too, and how you're socializing with everybody at your home, which now kind of like, I'm excited to see your guys' future growth, because this has only been 2 years since you left your job.
Yeah, we're on
almost 2.
We're on year 2 right now.
It took about a year to figure out what's going on, and now you got the coaching program, and you're doing all these things. So where does that take you guys? Where do you see?
I actually love that piece, the coaching program, because I think he gets super fulfilled from pouring into others. Mm-hmm. But I like that social aspect and having everybody over at the house. Like, that was really, really fun.
Yeah, it was. It was great.
And mind you, because one of the things that Edgar actually shared with me a book that you shared with him, which was The Go-Giver.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, and I was like, and I mean, we've met. I know you from the area and everything like that, and I know that you're the type that is just giving. You're just like, and it's difficult. And we've talked about this before. It's like it's difficult in this industry because everybody's like in competition and don't want. But you're just like an open book.
Yeah.
And I love it because I feel like sometimes, like some of the things that have helped me in some of the, like the successes that I've had is like if you just give, you'll get it back. It'll just come back, and everybody just wants that I guess that payback or whatever that without, and you're just like, hey bro, I'm an open book. And then reading that Go-Giver, we talked about it after. He let me have, he's like, it's a short read. I read it over the weekend, over a weekend, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, dang, like this is the epitome of Jason.
It's like, literally like what I've based my whole business off of. It's the fundamental understanding that like everything in life, opportunities, money, all of that stuff is 100% abundant, and there's no shortage of any of that stuff. So like if you apply it towards real estate, there's never going to be a shortage of deals to do because there's always going to be these opportunities that are out there. And the thing that was the tipping point for me was I learned this whole business by just going and finding information on the internet and listening to podcasts and going to YouTube. So in my head, I was like, can there really be any secret? Like if I can just go and watch YouTube and I have the answers on how to do deals, how can any of this stuff be proprietary? So let me just share the stuff that I've learned.
And Alan gave freely to you.
Yeah.
Like just the information.
Shout out to Alan.
And that's the thing too. Like I've actually found that this is not true of all successful people, but most successful people I meet, the vast majority of them are very open, right? And I think we feel like, oh, they're never going to talk to us. Or we feel at the beginning, it's like, well, I don't have any value to provide for them. And I've always felt like I can remember being that person very early on. And somebody helped me along the way. So I feel a sense of responsibility to always pay that forward.
And to your credit, you took action on what they told you to do.
I did. Yeah. I always did. And that's the secret, guys. Like if you want to go to somebody that's successful and ask them for advice, you need to apply everything that they say and do it without changing anything up. And I think a lot of times where people mess up is they get the recipe from somebody and they want to change one or two of the ingredients. And those ingredients usually are the things that they don't want to do, like cold calling, for example, right? And so it's like, well, I don't really want to cold call, so I'm going to take this huge ingredient out of it and I'm going to do everything else. And then they'll come back to me and 6 months later, they're like, well, it's not working. And I said, well, let me see how many calls you made. And I was like, well, I haven't been making calls. And I said, well, there's problem number one. You know what I mean? And so my big thing is if somebody gave me advice that I looked up to, I did it verbatim and I never went back to them until I had done everything. And here's how that person, the successful person, will know that you applied is because your questions will always be different. Yeah. When you come back in 3, 6, 9 months, the questions and the problems that you're struggling with will be different than what you originally talked about, because as soon as you apply all of these things, it opens up all these new issues that need to be resolved, right? And then come back to me. I'll give you exactly how to fix all of those things. You do that. And then it's just that process over and over. That never ends. Like if you're constantly evolving, like for me now, we're venturing into larger deals. We're converting this motel into long-term permanent housing. That's a big learning experience for us. Wow. We have this property that we're going to be developing into a gas station. That's a big new thing for us, right? And so for me,
imagine coming home and your husband saying, I think we're going to do a gas station.
We bought a gas station. Yeah, we're going to buy a gas station. Yeah, and so it's like, or a property that we're going to turn into a gas station. And so like even for me, that process of going and asking people never ends, because now I go to the mentors that have converted apartments or that have done gas station things. And I'm like, hey, I've got this in escrow. This is what we're doing. What advice would you give me? And they say, do bang, 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 do these things, right? And then I do all of those things. And once it's done, I'll just go back to them again. And that's the power of a network giving freely. That's why I wanted to do that thing at my house, because I want you guys to be around each other and realize the solutions that you're looking for all your problems are right there in that room. Right. And so I've been able to shortcut my learning curve and really compress it through other people's experience, right? And that's a full circle thing, right? You go get value from somebody else. Your responsibility is to pay that forward and pass that down to somebody that's coming behind you.
Yeah. I was thinking the numbers that you've generated, you're like, I was telling him, I was like, dude, he's flipped over 400 or 500 houses now. That's hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions. Now you pouring this information into other people, like the impact you're having is massive. Yeah. Because now we're talking about generations. Like my kids are going to benefit from what you guys have shared. Their kids, like that to me speaks volumes of what you've done for a lot of people.
I don't know if we think
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do a lot. And I think that to me is so much more important than money. Like I'll use Scott as an example. Like I remember, so Scott Farrell, him and I are working together, and I met Scott when he was 19 years old, and he initially started interning for me and my friend Benny on the team that we had at that time. And he was a barista at Cup of Joy. And now he's 25, and his life is different because we met, right? And I don't want to, I'm not taking credit for Scott's work. He had to do all the work. He had to apply all of those things. But I've had the small impact that I've had on him has changed his life forever. And so for me, that's an amazing feeling, right? And I want to be able to do that on a much bigger level, because I can remember what it was for me in 2011, 2012, 2013, where I wanted a different life, and people have had an impact on me. And I want to take everything that I've learned and just transfer that to as many people as I possibly can.
And to add on to that, I know you've had some pretty stellar events recently where you had like almost, I wouldn't call it a sellout crowd, but it was a sellout crowd. It was packed, full of people.
Yeah.
And it's just you sharing that information.
It is, man. It is. And all of those things, it's pretty amazing. Like we're going to get ready. We are in the process of doing another event, and we're doing it at Table Mountain. And so it's like a big thing for us, dude. We're doing a 2-day event in Table Mountain. They've got this amazing venue. We're spending way more money than I've ever spent on an event before, right? But I know, and I have faith. Yeah, I know it's going to be an amazing thing, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's just like the growth of that, and like just seeing how we used to go from these little small meetups where there were 6 of us in a room just kind of talking to now we have 400, 500, 600 people. You know what I mean? That's just a really good feeling, and it allows us to spread this message, I think, to as many people as we can. So it's cool.
But you said something about how you're impacting, future generations and my kids.
Yeah.
And, I hadn't really thought about it like that, because I see him one-on-one with the students, and I see the impact that you're making on you guys.
Yeah.
But I really didn't think about it.
I look at my
as your
kid
kids.
every day. Both kids now have a 4 and a 1-year-old, and I'm like, dude, you're lucky.
That's really important, dude. For me, that's a really important thing, because when I grew up, I had a good childhood. Mm-hmm. But nobody taught me anything like this. And I think, if you just come from a normal background or a rougher background, you do not have people that are modeling these kind of things in your life. And so for me, it's very important that Jennifer and I can do some of that here in our community, and hopefully on a larger scale, right? So people can say it's like, you can be married, you can have a great relationship with your spouse, you can make all the money that you want, you can have all of these things that you want, and not only can you have it, here's exactly how you do it, right? Yeah. It's just up to you to do that. And so I think, I think for me, we've moved past financial freedom and those things. I think we've accomplished that. Now I'm trying to see if I can operate with no brakes, no limits, nothing regulating me. How big and far can Jason go, right? Yeah. And then as I'm on that journey, how can I transfer the things that I've learned to other people? So then that way it it's not just about flipping houses. I want to learn how to take a river park out of the ground and do that, right? Somebody saw that and it was a dirt field and envisioned what river park is, right? I'd like to do big things like that. And so the way I look at it, you said something earlier about, okay, what's, you've been doing this for a while. What's the next 10 years look like? Like for me, I feel like we just got started, dude. So if it's like we're able to do all of this, right? Like, and now I finally figured out, like, here's how we do it. What's the next 10 years going to be like? And
the cool thing is that now you have your co-pilot, I guess you could say, on there to go to the moon.
And one thing that I know I'm seeing in you is like you already know what that looks like, because you're talking about it earlier. Like you have to see it, feel it, know that it's already there, it's already yours. So that's pretty exciting to see it eventually get manufactured. What I was saying, it's going to be amazing to witness.
I mean, we don't drive down the street anymore. We're driving down the street, looking at the buildings and looking at, look at that apartment. How much rent do you think that one is?
That's true. Right? It's a true story, dude. Like we'll drive and we'll see like a 300-unit apartment building, and I'll tell her I'm going to build one of those one of these days. Yeah. So one of these days we're going to own that right there, and that's a very powerful conversation to have, I think, as like a husband and wife.
No matter where we go, whether it's in town or if we're out of the country and. I mean, think about the hotel that we're going to look at.
Yeah, you go and you stay at these places and you look at some of these amazing houses and you start asking yourself, like, why not us? Why can't we do this stuff? Somebody did it. So it's already been done. So that's enough for me to know that I can do it if somebody else did it. And so you get in that space.
Why not us?
Why not us? That's right.
Why not us?
Why not us, right? Yeah. So I think it's a pretty good thing to kind of I guess come to an end on everything. Any last words you guys want to share with us, and tell us a little bit about where we can find you as well.
Go ahead. What are your last words? Parting thoughts for the people.
My last words would be to just be supportive of your spouse if they have a dream, right? Not just, your husband's dream, but if it's the wife that has a dream, like just be supportive of each other, and you guys can go so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think so many people underestimate how important this dynamic is at the beginning. There's no way that I would be doing anything that I'm doing without having Jennifer as my wife. And I think if you are wanting to make the transition that she and I did early on, I think you have to get on board with your spouse, and
that's the good times, the bad times, and everything in between.
Yeah,
and I love the way you mentioned, like, if you're saying affirmations to yourself in the mirror, and if you're already it's already something that you have to do that sounds a little, that if they're saying, well, that's stupid, how is that going to make you feel?
Exactly,
so
right.
That's
even
huge.
Little
That's
small things like that.
that.
Yeah, it's just little small things like that I think have a big impact, and so it's just making sure that dynamic is right. And if that dynamic between your spouse is right, I think
your spouse
you can do anything.
carefully.
Yeah, pick your spouse. Pick
Super
your spouse
important.
Make sure they got
Yeah.
straight teeth, clean shoes. And
There you
Good
go.
jawline.
There you go.
Yeah. Just as far as connecting with us on Instagram, it's funny. I've gotten Jennifer a little bit more active on Instagram, so she likes to
I'm
say,
just so private. I'm so private.
yeah, I post the business stuff and she posts our
life.
our life, right? So just on me, it's Jason Pritchard on either Facebook or Instagram. What's your handle on
Just
Instagram?
follow you.
Just follow me. And then
Follow Jason, and you'll
You'll eventually see me.
yeah.
cool. Right on.
Any last words?
No, I'm just super grateful for you guys' time sitting with us, and I'm excited to talk to my wife again and you go home and just continue to practice this stuff that you've taught us.
I love it.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
good. Thank you guys for having us, man.
Thank
This
you.
was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys.